Yeah, hi, thanks. It's nice to see you all here. This is my first time in Cologne. It's my first time doing a hug, so please be nice to me and don't ask me any difficult questions, but I'll do my best. So yeah, to introduce myself, like I said, I've been at HubSpot for 4 years. I initially started on the customer support team, so if you've been using HubSpot for a long time, it's possible that I once helped you with a problem. I'm now working on the Product Expert team. What we do is we work kind of between the support team and the product team. So the support team escalates like bugs and technical issues to us, and we kind of work on a solution. We also do a lot of data analysis on our support tickets. So try to see what's driving the volume and stuff, and then use that to try and make product decisions. I now work with the data analysis product group. So they own the reporting and analytics tools, as well as ads and social media. I was previously working with the mobile apps team, and now just recently moved to this. So I should be able to answer most technical questions you have about reporting. For strategy and stuff, I think Sebastian's probably still going to be the best person, but I'll do my best with any questions you have. Yeah, I'm from Ireland originally, live in Berlin now for 2 years. So, I mean, you've already introduced yourself, so we can skip this. You're mostly HubSpot users. It's, yeah, we can skip that. So what I want to talk about today is kind of two things. So rather than just tell you like what reports specifically to run in HubSpot, kind of talk a little bit about like how to think about reporting. And like, so in HubSpot we use the inbound methodology, and we kind of want to go through each stage of the customer's journey and talk about how to think about reporting at each stage. Like, what questions do we want to ask? And then I will talk a little bit about some of the specific reports that you can run. So HubSpot has a lot of built-in reports that you get straight away when you sign up or you go into the report library, but you can also build custom reports, and we'll touch on that a little bit today as well. And there's also a pretty big update that we just announced last week. Some of you may have heard of it, but I'm going to go through that in detail as well. So how to think about reporting. So at HubSpot, you're probably familiar with this if you're a HubSpot user, but at HubSpot we think of everything in terms of the flywheel. So the flywheel is, just the way we think about the customer journey. And the reason that we started using the flywheel as opposed to our previous way that we looked at things is because the way customers work with us has changed, right? We've done some surveys and some research, and what we've seen is that customers these days, they trust other customers far more than they trust sales or marketing people, right? And some of you might have experienced with that yourself. I know that I personally, if I'm trying to find a restaurant to visit, for example, I'm far more likely to listen to recommendations from friends or read Google reviews, for example, rather than read the restaurant's website that says they're great. You trust other people like you who are using it for the same reasons. So even though we were aware that the way customers interacted with us changed, we hadn't really changed a lot about how we deal with that information. We were still using the funnel process before, which kind of treats customers as an output. You send them through marketing, you send them through sales, and then at the end you get a customer, and that's kind of where it ends. So we've decided to move on from the funnel, and we now use the flywheel. And the flywheel puts customers right at the center of your business, and it also treats it as a cycle. So the point is that it's no longer you get customers in through marketing, through sales, and then you get a customer at the end. It's an ongoing cycle. We want to use our customers as well to drive more business by having them, word of mouth referrals and having them review us and things like that. The point of the flywheel is, it corresponds with the three main HubSpot hubs as well. There's marketing, sales, and service, and then customers, or the CRM, is right in the middle of it all. It also corresponds to the new way we think about the inbound methodology. So we think about attracting new business, engaging that business, and then delighting them so that they go on and spread the word to other people, and then the wheel keeps spinning, like that. It's basic physics the way we think of it. You apply force, which has it spinning faster, and that grows your business quicker. And if you apply friction, then it slows it down, and your growth doesn't go as quickly. So those are the kind of the two things that we want to look at. And with most reports, that is what you're looking at. You're trying to look at things that are going well that you can continue with, and you're trying to look at things that are slowing you down so that you can address those and make the right decisions based on it. So this is an example of, without the text, this is a report that our marketing team at HubSpot gets pretty much every month. We look at the reporting flywheel, or the flywheel, and we have the force and friction for each section. So we give them, each month we have like a few examples of elements of force, so things that have been going well in the past month, and elements of friction that are slowing us down. And then we work together across all different teams to try and like lean into those force aspects and like increase what we're doing there, and also to put a stop on the friction aspects. And these are 3 reports that we're going to talk through today. Obviously every business is slightly different, and you're going to have to, well, every business is very different, but the reports that you're going to have to do are going to be slightly different and depend on your needs. But these are 3 reports that we think are pretty relevant to most businesses using HubSpot, especially if you're following the in-men methodology, and it lets you look at force and friction at each stage of the buyer's journey. So today I'm going to go through a specific HubSpot customer, a real HubSpot customer, and we're going to use them as an example as I go through each stage of the flywheel. We're going to look at those reports for them and then see what takeaways we can take from that, see what are the elements of force and what are the elements of friction. So the 3 reports to run then are traffic analytics for the attract stage. Traffic analytics, some of you, if you've been using HubSpot for a while, we used to call the sources report. It's one of the original reports that we had in HubSpot. So some of you might be familiar with it. And it basically tells you where traffic to your website is coming from. So this is the customer that we're going to use today. This is an actual real HubSpot customer. It's A3C. They're a music festival and like tech conference based in Atlanta in Georgia in the US. And they use HubSpot for pretty much everything. They host their website on HubSpot. They do all their sales and marketing through HubSpot. They do they use the Service Hub as well, so they do all of their customer service through HubSpot. So they're a pretty good example for us to look at each stage. A brief introduction to what to look for in traffic analytics. This is generally the checklist that HubSpot consultants look at when they initially go into a new HubSpot account, or if one of our consultants is running an audit. These are what they look at in traffic analytics. So the source of the traffic, the quality of the traffic, and the differences across slices. And I'll explain what I mean by each of those. This is firstly where you find it, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So it's in the reports drop down in the navigation, and then analytics tools, and it's just here. If you use it in German, it's like Berichte and then analytics tools still. And then it's the one here in the top left. So that's what that screen looks like. And if you go into it, you might see something like this. So looking at this for A3C, we can see their traffic over time, and we can see it broken down by source as well. So with A3C, this is what it looks like. Does anyone have any observations on this? Get some audience participation. What's the first thing you notice when you look at this report? A hint is think about when you think their festival might take place in the year. So their traffic is very seasonal, right? The first thing you see when you look at that is that it's very seasonal. They have in September, their festival is in October. So in September, October every year, they get a lot more traffic to the site because obviously people are checking out the lineup and they're buying tickets and things like that. So they have a lot of opportunity to build traffic over the rest of the year. Maybe they can share content from the previous year, share videos of performances and things like that. I think that's the first thing that you would notice there. Another thing is when you look at how these are broken down by color. So the blue is direct traffic, but the biggest chunk other than that is organic search. So if we look at organic search, it's up year over year, which is great, right? Obviously what any marketer wants to see is that it's up year over year. But we can go a little bit further and break down the sources further. So if we look at social media, one thing that you notice there is the traffic is also really high with social media, right? So that's maybe an area of force that they would want to lean into. Paid search is particularly interesting because while the traffic isn't as high, the conversion rate is quite high, right? So that is something else that they would want to lean into and see if they can drive more traffic via paid search because they can see that they're converting. You can also go down by social platform and you can see more details. So we can see that Facebook is driving the most amount of traffic, but Instagram converts a bit higher, right? So maybe Instagram is something that they want to lean into a bit more. LinkedIn is one that I called out here as well because the LinkedIn traffic is relatively low compared to the other platforms, but it also created 11 contacts. So maybe LinkedIn is something that they can lean into. It's not necessarily the most obvious platform when you're trying to market a music festival, but maybe they can share some thought leadership. They also have talks at the festival, so maybe they can share some content from those. So just from looking at these numbers, you kind of immediately have some takeaways just from seeing what is already going well and seeing where the force is. This one is really interesting, and actually we find that like a lot of people in HubSpot don't use this often enough. This is the referrals page. So some of these are obvious for a music festival. We have Ticketmaster and Bands in Town. Obviously it's a music festival, so you would expect music ticketing websites to send a lot of traffic. But the two things that I flagged here are Explore Georgia and Atlanta.net. So they're two local sites based in Atlanta. So what this tells us is that people locally in Atlanta are engaging with the content on their local media. So maybe an action item here is for them to work with more local media or local newspapers, local blogging sites and stuff like that to get traffic in that way. And another thing that we often don't see people use a lot is that you can actually overlay a website metric over this traffic. So here we're looking at the same website traffic report that we looked at before, but we can also see the bounce rate over time. So the bounce rate is the percentage of people who arrive on the website and then leave without, after viewing just one page. So they leave without spending a lot of time there. And so that's pretty interesting. We can see that it kind of aligns with it. But if you dig down a little further and look at this specifically for their homepage, while their traffic increased, we can also see a huge spike in their bounce rate here. And usually you can expect some fluctuation in bounce rate, right? But this is a pretty big spike, so it's something you might want to look at. You can't see it on the report here, but from working with A3C, we know that they had a website redesign at this time. So this is their homepage bounce rate, and it corresponds exactly with when they redesigned their homepage, right? So that's obviously something that's going to be slightly concerning. And this is what the redesign looked like. So we can see before, even though it looks nicer and cleaner now, before the navigation was a lot easier. You arrived on the website, you could immediately see those buttons and you could get to where you wanted to go. And what they saw was when they changed this, people were arriving on the website, they obviously didn't know where to go or didn't know what to click through, and so they were just leaving. So a very clear action item here is to make sure that that navigation is just as clear as it was before. And that's something you can see just from looking at that spike in the bounce rate. Just another tip before we move on from the traffic's analytics is you can create an analytics view to look at a subsection of your traffic. So you can break it down, in this example it shows blog. You can break it down by domain or subdomain, so you can do blog dot or info dot. You can do it by directory, so for a music festival it may be, for example, lineup or the ticket pricing page or something like that. And you can also do it for country, so that's not going to be too relevant for these guys, but if any of you are operating in other countries, maybe you want to see specifically how your French market traffic was doing over a given time period, or your Italian market, for example. And you can break it down that way, because looking at it overall gives you an idea, but if you've made a lot of changes in a specific area, then it might be more useful to break it down that way. So a summary of what we look at in traffic analytics is the source of the traffic, where are they coming from, the quality, so even if a lot of traffic is coming into your site but they're leaving immediately, is that good traffic? And also the variance when you break it down into groups. And so then that gives us action items for A3C, right? So we have the 2 points of force, which are organic traffic to the blog, and then Facebook and local traffic. Those are two things that we know do well, so we should lean into and add to our efforts there. And then a force of friction was the bounce rate, right? So we know that we had an issue with people arriving on the website and then leaving, which corresponded with the redesign, so maybe we need to tweak the redesign a little bit. Does anyone have questions on traffic analytics specifically before I move on? Or cool. So the next stage then, once you get them to the website, is to engage them, right? And for this we look at attribution reports. And the way we explain attribution reports is it's like a game of football, right? In football, the goal is to score a goal. The aim is to score a goal, is to get the ball into the back of the net, right? That's the end goal. It's like in business, what you want to do is close the deal. But there's more to look at than just the ball getting into it, right? So each one of these plays is important. If one of these passes doesn't happen, then the ball doesn't get to the striker and it doesn't get into the goal. So you don't want to just look at who is scoring the goal. You also want to look at how the ball got to them, right? So you need to look at the people who are doing the most assists. And I did have to Google the top goal scorer for FC Köln, but the point stands. You need to look at who's also getting the ball to them, right? It's not just the goal scorer that's scoring these goals. It's the rest of the team that's getting it up there. And you can think of business in a similar way, right? We often tend to look at deals closed and deal revenue in terms of the sales team bringing that in. And the sales team is obviously very important. They're closing the deal. But we can also look at each of these touch points that a customer has along the way. Like, how are they getting to the sales team? The sales team can't close a deal unless those leads come in. So that's why we announced attribution reporting last week at our inbound conference. And the point of attribution reporting is to look at each of those touch points along the way and see how those leads get from being a total stranger through to getting to the sales team and closing a deal. And we'll look at that a little bit in terms of A3C, right? So for this example, I'm going to use an A3C customer, right? So this is Bethany. She's from Atlanta, she's a local, she's a big music fan, she's like the perfect, ideal prospect for A3C. She's taken a few weeks off in October, so she's Googling things to do in Georgia in October, right? And she finds this first result from exploregeorgia.org, which is Georgia Fall Bucket List. So she clicks into this, she reads through, she sees the link to A3C, she clicks through to their website and she has a look around, right? This is the first time she comes in contact with A3C. A few days later, she's on Facebook and she comes across a paid ad for A3C. She clicks in again, she sees they've announced some of the lineup, a lot of artists that she really likes are playing. So she's kind of interested, she signs up for the newsletter and she follows them on Twitter as well, right? Because she wants to stay in contact and stay up to date. So that's when we create her as a lead within HubSpot. She then, say, a few days later, she sees a tweet, right? They've tweeted that the lineup has been announced. She goes in, she sees that she's pretty interested in everyone playing, so she signs up to receive a notification when tickets go on sale, right? She says, I want to get a ticket for this, let me know when they're on sale. So that's when we create a deal. And then, say, a few days later, she still follows them on Twitter. They've tweeted a few blog posts in the meantime. She clicks into one of those and she reads it, but takes no other actions. Then a week later, she gets an email, a marketing email saying tickets are on sale. She clicks through, she buys this general admission ticket for $400. She buys two, she buys one for her and one for her friend. And this is when we close the deal, right? This is when this deal is closed won, she's become a customer. So this is the total revenue that she brought in, right? She bought two tickets for $400 each, so that's $800. And her buyer's journey had these important touch points, right? It wasn't just that last time when she visited and bought the ticket. All of these elements were important in getting her to be a customer. So there was that first touch when she Googled it. There was the Facebook ad that created her as a lead. There was the tweet where she created the deal, and then the email that closed her as one. And then there was also the blog post she reviewed along the way, right? So that wasn't necessarily one of the four main touch points that we look at, but it still was an element in getting her from complete stranger to buying a ticket. So what attribution reporting tries to do is assign a percentage value to each of these touch points. So it's a way of saying, for example, that first paid Facebook ad that she viewed, that was worth X amount of revenue to us. That was worth X percentage of the overall money that she brought in. And there are a few different ways that you can do attribution reporting. There are a few different models. There are far more than this. These are just some of the more common ones. Some of you might be familiar with them using like other reporting software. I'm just going to go through two of them now. We are still fleshing out the attribution reporting in HubSpot, so we will be adding more models. But for now, I'll just look at two of the more popular ones. And the way you choose what model to look at is by deciding what question you want to answer. So one question that you might want to answer here is, how are our paying customers first finding out about us, right? So you're being asked that and you have to put together a report. What we might look at here is first touch attribution, which is a single touch attribution. And basically what that does is gives 100% of the overall revenue credit to the first touch that they have, right? So for Bethany, it was that organic search. So what we're saying using the first touch model is that that referral from exploregeorgia.com or exploregeorgia.org, that's worth 100% of the money that she brought in, right? So that referral was worth $800 to us. That's what first touch attribution is saying. And this is kind of what it's going to look like. It's still, we're not quite in beta yet with this, but it should look something like this. Here we have the different colors represent different models. So we're going to look at the purple one for right now, which is the first touch model. And what this graph here shows us is that paid social is the highest revenue driver with first touch, right? We can see that here. Paid social is driving a lot of their revenue. We can also look at some of the other ones, right? So organic social, even though we saw earlier in the traffics report that organic social was bringing in a lot of traffic, we can see here that it's not really bringing in a lot of revenue. So that kind of gives you another way to look at your traffic. The traffic analytics is looking at how leads find your website, whereas with this, they're looking at specifically how customers find your website. So traffic analytics is everyone that visits your website, but this is specifically the people who go on to spend money. So it's kind of just an additional way to look at it. So we had organic social as a point of force when we looked at the analytics report. But with this, maybe we need to change our strategy up a bit, or maybe it's not worth investing that much in if people aren't actually converting to customers when they arrive via that. Another interesting thing to look at here is that email and blog are bringing in nothing for first touch attribution. Email makes sense. You wouldn't expect an email to be the first place, legally anyway. You shouldn't have their email address until they've interacted with you in some way. So you wouldn't expect email to drive much here. But blog posts, that seems like an opportunity for them, right? It seems like a blog post is something that should be able to drive some of the initial interaction with a festival website, right? They could be sharing interviews with the artist playing and things like that. So I think that's a clear point of opportunity for them and something that they can work on. Another question that you might ask, and a different way to think about attribution reporting, is how they're first finding your website, but maybe you want to know what specifically is influencing them all along the way. And so for this, you might use full path attribution. Full path attribution looks at the 4 main touch points that we discussed earlier: the first touch, the lead creation, the deal creation, and the closed one. And it says they're worth 90%, that all of those together are worth 90% of the revenue that comes in. And then the remaining 10% is for all other touch points. So with Bethany, if you remember, we had the first touch was the organic search, then the Facebook ad, the Twitter tweet, and the email at the end. So they're all worth 22.5% each, or $180 each. So this is telling you that Facebook ad for this customer was worth $180 to you. So it gives you a specific monetary amount that you can apply to your marketing assets. And then because she also viewed the blog post, and we think that probably influenced her in some way as well, that gets the remaining 10% or $80. If she had viewed 2 blog posts, then the 10% would be split across them, so they would be worth $40 each. So it's just a way that you can kind of apply money to your marketing assets, and rather than just saying, the sales team brought in X amount of revenue, you can say, well, the marketing team did this, or this specific blog post brought in this amount. So if we look at this again in the reporting tool for the full path model, we can see that paid social is still on top. Paid social is still their biggest driver. Organic social, still pretty low. It's bringing in some when we look at this, but it's still pretty low. So organic social is definitely an area where A3C can change their strategy a little bit. What's really interesting here is when you look at blog and email. So they brought in 0 each with the first touch model. But with full path, they've actually brought in a lot of revenue. So when you look at more than just how your contacts initially got to your website, and you look at everything they interacted with along the way, you can see that blog and email marketing are actually driving a lot of revenue, and you can put an actual figure on it. So yeah, a summary of attribution reports is you want to know what question you're trying to answer, which will let you know which model to use. You want to know how a specific channel or asset is performing. You can break it down into social or blog, and you can drill down further into those as well. And it lets you give credit where credit's due. So sales teams are great and very important, just like the person who scores the goal in a football game, but they need to get the leads, or they need to get the ball. So this lets you kind of see that process. And then if we apply that to the flywheel again, we have 2 points of force and 2 points of friction, so that they know something to lean into. Before I move on, does anyone have questions on attribution specifically? Yeah?
Not attribution specifically, but more like your example. It was shown that they got there via the Explore Georgia posting. Wouldn't that be, you said it was organic search, but wouldn't that be referral in the end?
Yeah, it would be. It's a bad example. No, good point. Well, yeah.
Really depends on how you view
I guess it depends on what information Explore Georgia is sending in. If they're sending in they might send in the.
If she just Googles again.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. Good point. Good point. It was just a bad example. It's sorry. The attribution reports, by the way, the beta is going live next month. So from the 1st of October, if you are an enterprise user, you'll be able to opt in. It's going to be in beta for a while. It's probably not going to launch fully until next year, and that's when we'll be adding stuff for other tiers as well. So initially it's just for enterprise users, and you'll be able to opt in from next month. And yeah, I'm sure like whoever you're in contact with will let you know once it goes live for other tiers as well. Right, so that's the first two that we've looked at. We've attracted them, engaged them. We have brought people into the site. We've sold them tickets. They've gone to the festival. But how do we know if we're delighting them? So if we remember from earlier, customers trust other customers, right? So the important thing is to get people to have a good time and then to use that, have them share that experience, because that's what pulls other people in. So two things we can look at here are tickets and feedback reports. So are many of you using the Service Hub in HubSpot? No. Well, luckily tickets is also available in the free product, so you can still use some of this. So here's an example. Here's Bethany's friend Otis, who went to the festival with her. And he's having a good time, but he tweeted them on the first day of the festival, you know, it's great, but where are the water fountains? It's in Georgia, right, the southern US, it's probably going to be pretty hot. So the team at A3C, they got this, they tracked it in HubSpot because they're using tickets, which as I said is available on all the tiers, it's available for free. Within tickets, they can add notes, they can talk about what they discussed, they can email or call him directly from here, they can @mention other users, so you know maybe this is someone sitting in the office but there's a team on site that can help him out, they can @mention them and notify them there. So they track everything in this ticket. But maybe you want to report on some of these questions, right? These are some of the questions that you have about your ticket. So like how long are they taking? What are they about? Where are they coming from and who's answering them? And the way you would answer these questions on tickets is with properties. So these are some of the ticket properties that you might use for these specific questions. Time to first reply, ticket category, ticket source, and ticket owner. And the way we report on these properties is by building a custom report. So it's pretty easy to build a custom report. I'm going to go through the 6 steps here. The first thing you do is you go to any dashboard and you can click add report. So it doesn't need to be, for example, if you're making a report on a sales thing, you don't need to be on the sales dashboard. From any dashboard, you can click add report. Bericht hinzufügen, I guess, in the German version. You can click add report and then create a custom report. You then choose what you want to report on. So the 6 things that you can build a custom report on in HubSpot are contacts, companies, deals, activities, which is like emails, calls, tasks, things like that, tickets, and product, right? So for this example, obviously it's tickets that we want to do. Then you can choose what properties you want to look at here. So for this, we want to see what our tickets are about, right? We want to see how many other people are asking about the water. So we're going to select category. Your support team who's logging these tickets, they select a category when they close it so that you can keep them all categorized. Then you can add some filters. So maybe you only want to look at tickets from this month, or you only want to look at tickets from, you know, your German contacts or something like that. You want to specify it, make it smaller. You can do that here. For this example, we're going to look at all tickets from this year's festival. So we'll look at this year to date. And then you choose what you want to actually display in the report. So you've set the filters if you want to limit the data that's being pulled in. And then what you set here is what you want to actually see about that data that you've pulled in. So for this example, we want to see how many tickets were filed in each category. So we're going to do category measured by count of tickets. And what that shows us here is amenities had 35, right? So amenities is going to cover things like the water fountains and things like that. So that was our biggest ticket driver here. And you can see that here, and you can also click in and you can go in and look at the specific tickets under that. But this is just, it's kind of a quick way to build a report, and you can see at a glance in that visualization the metrics that you've set here on the side. And then you can save the report. You can save it to either an existing dashboard, create a new dashboard, or if you can just save it to no dashboard and have it just be in your reports list. But creating custom reports, I think, is something that is often a bit intimidating because there are so many properties that you can choose from. But the way to think about it is kind of think about what question you want answered and what information you want to see. So in this case, we wanted to see how many tickets were filed about water. So category is the thing that we wanted to look at, and then we wanted to see it broken down by how many tickets were filed in that. And then from there you can filter, or you can add additional information. I think one thing that I come across a lot with people struggling with reports or not being able to see the data that they want is they add too many properties in here or too many data points, and so then the report comes out and it's correct, the information's there, but it's like a mess and you can't make any sense of it. I think the best way to approach it is to kind of have one specific question that you want each report to answer, and then, you know, add things in slowly until, you know, don't have a report that's like all going all different directions, because then you can't really get any actionable information from it. So we figured out that a lot of people were asking about water, so obviously next year we're going to need to add additional water taps, or maybe put some signs up showing where the taps are, right? But how's Bethany doing? According to Twitter, great. She loved it. She had a great time. So this is clearly an opportunity for us to use her as an advocate and use her to pull in more people next year. You know, we want her to tell her friends what a great time she had and invite them along next year. So how do we quantify this, right? This tweet is great, but what can we do with it? One thing we can do is look at NPS. NPS, you may be familiar with it. It's kind of a customer support or customer services industry standard. It's basically, it asks the question, if you follow HubSpot support ticket, you've definitely seen it before. It asks the question, how likely are you to recommend this experience to a friend? This is what it looks like when they receive that email. Basically, they choose a number from 0 to 10 based on how likely they are to recommend it to a friend. And then this is what the dashboard looks like in HubSpot. So we can see the actual NPS score, which is promoters, which is 9s and 10s, minus detractors, which is 0 through 6. And you can see the actual score, and then you can also see the improvement over time. So this lets you see how you're doing kind of at a glance, but it also lets you see if there's any improvement, or, you know, if you see a sudden dip here, what does that correspond with? What change did you make around that time? So one thing that's also important is that you can automate based on the NPS. So what we can do here is say Bethany clicked 10. So we want to send her an automatic email saying, like, you know, great that you had a great time. Can you please like share your experience on social media, or maybe leave us a public review or something like that. You want to take those people who had a really great time and encourage them to go and advocate for your business, or to, you know, share things publicly, because as we saw before, that's what people trust most. And yeah, so that's kind of the report. So this is what the report that our HubSpot marketers receive. Wouldn't have tickets about water, for example, but like something that looks like this, where it shows the points of force and friction at each stage of the flywheel. And it's a good thing to look at on, say, like a monthly cadence, or even quarterly or whatever. Like, what are the big things that you want to focus on? Obviously, depending on your business, you're going to want to go more specific and have more specific reports about certain things. But these reports are a good way to get a general overview of like the main things that are going really well and the main things that are areas of improvement. And so it's a good way to look at it. So to summarize, force is good, friction is bad, and the flywheel is what shows you where each is. We have one main report for each of these stages. So it's traffic analytics for the attract stage, the attribution reporting for the engage stage, and custom ticket reports and feedback for delight. And since I work at HubSpot, we have to end on a call to action. So I would recommend that you go and look at your own reports, not attribution because it's not quite live yet, but the other ones, and kind of just start to think about these things in terms of force and friction, and in terms of what are the questions that you want to answer when you go into these reports. HubSpot has a lot of useful reports in the reports library. So if you just go to reports library, it has like a navigation at the side broken down by kind of category. So like marketing, sales, productivity, things like that. And we have a lot of built-in reports. And from there, you can either customize the reports, or you can build a custom report like we discussed before. And yeah, that's reporting in the flywheel.